The night the shy bride arrived at the lonely mountain man's cabin, the wind tore down the slopes like a living thing, dragging snow and darkness with it, and the fire inside the cabin burned lower than it ever had, as if it sensed that before morning, two broken lives would be forced to face truths neither had been ready to carry alone. The mountain man stood at the doorway, his rough hands stiff from cold and years of solitude, watching a small figure climb the last stretch of the path toward him, and in that moment, he felt something unfamiliar stir inside his chest. Not hope, not fear, but the quiet certainty that whatever was coming would change him forever. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that even the most wounded hearts can still find light, take a moment now to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel Wild West Tale, where stories like this are told from the soul. The mountain man had not always lived alone. Once, long ago, his life had been filled with voices, laughter, and the simple warmth of belonging. But tragedy had climbed faster than joy ever could. An illness had taken his wife during a brutal winter, and their newborn child followed soon after, leaving behind a silence so heavy it crushed him. The village below tried to help at first, bringing food, offering company, speaking words they believed might heal him. But grief does not soften when surrounded by noise. It hardens. And so he left, building a cabin high in the mountains, where the world felt honest in its cruelty, and storms did not pretend to be gentle. Up there, pain made sense. Years passed. His hair grayed, his hands grew rougher, and his heart learned how to close itself tightly against memory. The villagers spoke of him in hushed tones, calling him strong, calling him strange, calling him lonely. They believed he had chosen this life. In truth, it was the only life that did not demand he feel anything at all. The shy bride, on the other hand, had never chosen anything. She had learned early that silence was safer than speaking, that obedience kept her unnoticed, and that being unseen was sometimes the only form of protection available. To a girl with no one to defend her, orphaned young, she moved from one household to another, always useful, never loved. Whispers followed her as she grew older. Not because she had done wrong, but because she carried sadness too openly in her eyes. In a small village, sorrow makes people uncomfortable. When the elders decided she would marry the mountain man, they called it mercy. They said she would have a roof, food, and a husband who would not ask questions. What they did not say was that her absence would quiet the rumors, or that her presence in the mountains would keep her secret safely out of sight. She listened as her future was discussed, like an object being placed where it caused the least trouble, and she nodded because nodding had always been easier than resisting. The journey up the mountain was long and unforgiving. By the time she reached the cabin, her legs trembled from exhaustion and fear, and her heart felt as though it might tear itself apart. The mountain man watched her approach, noting how small she seemed against the vastness of the land, how her shawl barely shielded her from the cold. He expected resentment or defiance when she looked at him. Instead, he saw apology, as if she were already sorry for existing in his space. Inside the cabin, the air was thick with smoke and silence. He offered her food and warmth, unsure of what else a man like him could give. She accepted quietly, her movements careful, her eyes darting as though she were waiting for something bad to happen. He noticed her hands shaking as she lifted the bowl, noticed the faint bruises on her wrists that told stories she never spoke aloud. Something twisted painfully in his chest, and he hated it because it meant he still cared. As the night deepened, neither of them spoke. Words felt dangerous, capable of opening wounds better left sealed. The mountain man stared into the fire, seeing faces from his past flicker in the flames. The girl sat near the wall, her back straight, her breath shallow, guarding something invisible with her whole body. The wind screamed outside, rattling the cabin, and the mountain seemed to lean closer, listening. When sleep finally came, it did so unevenly. The mountain man lay near the fire, half awake, half haunted, while the girl retreated into the small room he had prepared for her. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, her hands clenched in her lap, fighting the panic rising in her throat. This night was supposed to mark a beginning, but all she felt was an ending pressing closer. In the darkest hour before dawn, the mountain man heard a sound that pierced through his restless mind. It was soft, broken, and desperate, the kind of sound that comes from someone who has learned that crying aloud only brings more pain. His body reacted before his thoughts could stop it. He stood, heart pounding, and moved toward the small room. What he saw there shattered the careful walls he had built around himself. The shy bride was on the floor, her body curled protectively around a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Her face was streaked with tears she had tried and failed to hide. When she realized she had been seen, shame washed over her so completely that it seemed to erase her entirely. Slowly, as if surrendering to fate, she opened the cloth just enough to reveal the truth she had carried up the mountain. A child lay sleeping in her arms, fragile and pale, her breathing uneven and weak. The mountain man felt the room spin as memories flooded back with brutal force. The weight of his own lost child, the helplessness, the rage at a world that took without asking. He staggered back, gripping the doorframe, his chest aching as if something inside him were tearing. 3 now before open. The girl bowed her head, expecting anger, rejection, punishment. She had been told her entire life that her existence was a mistake, that her child was a burden no one would accept. She had been sent away not as a bride, but as a problem to be hidden. She waited for the mountain man to turn away, to send her back into the storm, to confirm everything she had ever believed about herself. But something else happened instead. The mountain man knelt on the floor, his movements slow and reverent, as though approaching something sacred. He looked at the child, then at the girl, and in her eyes he saw not deceit but terror born of love. He saw a mother who had endured cruelty and silence to protect something fragile. He saw his own pain reflected back at him, reshaped but just as raw. That night neither of them slept. The mountain man tended to the child, warming water, feeding her carefully, using knowledge he thought grief had erased. The girl watched in disbelief, waiting for the moment kindness turned into condemnation. It never came. Instead, she saw gentleness in a man the world had labeled hardened beyond repair. As the hours passed, something shifted between them. The mountain man realized that the solitude he had clung to was not strength, but fear. He had buried himself alive to avoid loss, only to discover that life had found him anyway, carrying pain and possibility in equal measure. The girl began to understand that silence was not the only way to survive, that there were hands capable of holding without hurting. When dawn finally broke, the mountain was transformed. Snow glowed softly in the early light, and the world felt newly made. The mountain man stepped outside, breathing deeply, feeling something like purpose settle into his bones. He knew the village would not understand. He knew there would be questions, judgment, perhaps even hostility. But for the first time in years, he did not care. He returned inside and looked at the girl and the child, both asleep now, their faces peaceful in the gentle light. In that moment, he understood that family was not defined by blood or tradition, but by the choice to stay, to protect, to love when it is hardest. Days turned into weeks, and the mountain cabin slowly changed. Laughter, hesitant at first, began to replace silence. The girl learned to speak without fear, her voice growing stronger as she realized she was safe. The child grew healthier, surrounded by care and warmth. The mountain man found himself smiling at things he once ignored, his grief no longer the center of his existence, but a part of a larger living story. When the villagers eventually came, they found not a scandal, but a family. They saw a man softened by responsibility, a woman standing taller than she ever had before, and a child thriving where she was never expected to survive. Some turned away, uncomfortable with their own choices. Others learned something they had forgotten, that compassion is braver than judgment. As this story draws near its end, if it touched your heart, if it reminded you that love can appear in the most unexpected forms, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and let us know how it made you feel. Your engagement helps stories like this reach others who may need them. Before the final moment, we have one special request for you. Please comment below with a word or phrase that represents hope to you. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. The mountain man never returned to the life he once knew, and he never wanted to. In the quiet before each sunrise, as light crept over the peaks, he would stand at the cabin door and watch the world awaken, grateful for the night that broke him open instead of breaking him apart. Because sometimes the secret that changes everything is not meant to destroy us, but to remind us that even the loneliest hearts were made to love, and that dawn always comes for those who choose to stay.